Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about rubrics as an assessment tool. First of all, we have to understand what is a rubric. A rubric is a multi-purpose scoring guide for assessing student products and performances. In rubric, the clearly stated criteria are used to sort out level of performance into various categories. In 2013, S.M. Brookhart also defined rubrics. In his definition, he defined rubrics as a coherent set of criteria for students' work that includes descriptions of levels of performance quality on the criteria. The definition given by Brookhart clearly indicates that a rubric should essentially has two aspects. One is coherent set of criteria and the another is the description level of performance for these criteria. So in rubrics there are a set of criteria and the description of level of performances on these criteria. Now, moving further, we discuss here what kind of works can be assessed with the rubrics. The primary purpose of rubrics is to assess the performances. Some performances may involve students to get engaged in process of doing something, like playing a musical instrument, performing dance, doing gymnastics, typing, performing an experiment, make a speech to the class, reading, street play or drama conducted by the students, conducting research. We may also assess critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving as well. The other performances may involve them in producing some work in the form of a product, like a research report, laboratory report, magazine article, lesson plan, concept map, poem, story, diagram of structure, or it may include any kind of exhibit, map, graph, homemade product, etc. So, almost all kind of performances in educational institutions can be assessed very effectively with rubrics. We can say that rubrics is a very good tool for assessing the different type of works of the students as well as teacher. Now, moving further, we discuss here types of rubrics. S.M. Brookhart has classified rubrics by keeping two aspects under consideration. The one aspect is whether the rubric contain the criteria one at a time or together. On this basis, rubric are classified into two types: analytical rubric and holistic rubric. The another aspect is whether the rubric is journal or could be used with a family of similar tasks. or is task specific and only applicable for assessing a particular task. On this basis, rubrics can be classified again into two types: general rubrics and task specific rubrics. Now, first we discuss here what is analytic rubrics. In analytic rubrics, there are several indicator, categories, criteria, and level of performances for each category. In another word, you can say that work on each criterion for various level of described separately in analytical rubrics. The second type of rubric is holistic rubrics. In holistic rubrics, works are described by applying all the criteria at the same time under each level. So, the criteria are present in the hidden form in the description of performances. It enables the teacher to assess the quality of performance as a whole without focusing on separate components. The third type is general rubrics. In general rubrics, those criteria are and descriptions of performances are included, which may be applied across disciplines or coherent area. It can be used different tasks for similar performances and has wider application. Basically, in general rubrics, learner encounter with the same expectations of learning outcomes each time they approach a similar task. For example, problem solving and writing ability of the learner can be assessed with the general rubrics. Each time learners solve a problem, they know the certain key elements of learning must be present regardless the specific problem. Single general rubrics can be used for many similar kind of tasks or assignment, and hence there is no need to prepare rubric for every assignment. The last type is specific rubrics. Specific rubrics are specific to the performance tasks with which they are used. It includes the specific descriptions of performance related to a particular problem or task. It contains the answer to a particular problem, may list facts and concept or explain the reasoning that learners are supposed to mention and used. In another word, it details the elements to look for in the student's performance on a particular task. After understanding or discussing the types of rubric, now we have to discuss here development of rubric, or you can say that what are the basic steps or stages for the development of a good rubrics. There are 5 basic stages involved in designing or constructing a rubric, namely First is reflecting. Second stage, development of learning objectives and highest level of performance. Third stage, grouping and labeling for creating criteria. Fourth stage, selection of scale levels. Fifth stage, development of descriptions for each criterion under various scale level. Now, the first is reflecting. The first is in the direction of constructing a rubric is reflecting. In this stage, you need to devote time to reflect on the overall course objectives, the need and the purpose for designing the assignment, learner prior knowledge, your previous experiences related to the similar assignment, your expectations from the learner, the skill which need to be developed by the learner to complete the assignment, etc. In this context, Stevens and Levy has also specified 8 specific questions, answering which can make the reflective process more easier and authentic. So, according to Stevens and Levy, the first question which you should encounter is, why did you create this assignment? While answering this question, you need to think about the main purpose of designing the assignment. The purpose may be motivate the learner to gain as much as content knowledge as possible, or to facilitate learning skill like critical thinking or reasoning ability, or to encourage learner in some kind of experiential learning. For example, engaging them in laboratory work, workshop, etc. The second question which you need to focus on is, have you given this assignment or a similar assignment before? If your answer is yes, then you have to think over the questions asked by the learners before and after completion of that assignment. You also need to think what the overall results for you were satisfactory or not. Recall some significant satisfactory as well as disappointing results. Now, think if any changes can be made to the assignment to increase the probability to obtain the same satisfactory result and avoiding the undesired results. The third question is, how does this assignment relate to the rest of what you are teaching? Here, you have to think that how this assignment is related to the other assignments and how successful completion of this assignment can provide base for the future assignments. You also need to think that to what extent it is important to the learners, scholars, lives, and the particular discipline. The fourth question is, what skills will students need to possess or develop successfully to complete this assignment? After identifying the skills, you should think that do learners already have such skills or require to improve them further? Are one or more of these skills of greater importance than other? Think if you want to do anything about their skill level. The fifth question is what exactly the task assigned? Can this task or assignment be broken into variety of different component tasks? Are one or more of these component tasks of greater importance than another? How the breakdown and nature of these component tasks can be explained to the learner. Students, the six questions which you encounter is what evidence can be provided by the students in order to show that they have accomplished what you expect them to accomplish when you created the assignment. So, you have to identify the possible evidences that might be used by the learner to demonstrate their knowledge and skill. The seventh question which you have encountered in this process is what are the highest expectations you have for student performance on this assignment overall? While answering this question, you need to reflect on the components of an exemplary performance. The eighth question and the last question for the reflection is what is the worst fulfillment of the assignment you can imagine? Here, you need to think the specific area or part of task in which students could not perform well on similar assignment in the past. Now, you reflect on the way you can help your students to overcome those limitations. So students, it is better to write down the answer of above stated questions. The answer of these questions will help you in deciding which type of rubric could best be used for serving the purpose for which assignment is designed. Moreover, these will assist you in deciding whether you need to construct a new rubric or previously developed rubric could be used with certain adaptations or modifications. These answers will also generate ideas which surely facilitate construction of a highly quality rubrics. Now moving further to the second stage in the process of development of rubrics. The second stage is development of learning objectives and highest level of performance. In this stage, there are two steps. The first one is writing specific learning objectives, and the second one is writing highest level of performance for these objectives. Students, here you need to articulate the specific learning objectives which you expect your students to accomplish through this assignment. The answer of the questions which we discuss in the first is question number 4, question number 5 and question number 6 will guide you. That is, what skill will students need to have or develop successfully to complete this assignment? What exactly is the task assigned? What evidences can be provided by the students in order to show that they have accomplished what you expected them to accomplish when you created a assignment? In this way, the initial list of specific learning objectives will be ready, and then you should refine and recognize the list after reviewing and discussing with your peer group, colleagues, teachers, and students. In second step, we will write the highest level of performance for these objectives. After listing the learning objectives in the previous stage, the description of the highest level of performance which is expected for each learning goal should be written here. In this step, the answer of question number 7 from the previous stage 1, will guide us. Let me remind you the question. It was, what are the highest expectations you have for student performance on this assignment overall? I have tried to compile the highest level of performance which the learner is expected to show during his or her presentation for a particular task assigned. Now, moving further to the third stage, grouping and labeling for creating criteria. In this stage, the similar performance expectations are grouped together and labels are created for each group. For this, we need to start with the final list of highest performance expectations generated in the previous step. After this, we will read the list carefully and begin to group together similar items. For example, rubrics for oral presentation. We have distributed the highest level of performance statements into 6 groups of similar tasks and labeled them as the first one, audience engagement, non-verbal communication, audience awareness, organization, content, use of media. Now, stage 4. Stage 4 basically deal with the selection of scale levels. After creating the criteria, dimension, in the stage 4, we select the scale levels for rubrics, which indicate how well or poorly the task has been performed. So, the first task we need to do is to decide on the number of scales levels. To decide how many scales levels should be there, The decision should be based on a very simple principle. Select as many as which you can distinctly describe in terms of meaningful differences in performance quality. Hence, for a very simple task, it may be two labels or term as accomplished or proficient and not yet. However, in rubrics, 3 to 5 performance levels are more appropriate or more prevalent. Going beyond to 5 scales usually become more difficult as differentiating between the performance for each level and articulating them precisely become more challenging. Many of the academicians suggest to use even number scale level in order to avoid the tendency to rate at the middle level. The example of even number or a 4 scale level rubric are advanced, proficient, basic, below basic. Or you can also give the scale levels like exemplary, proficient, marginal, unacceptable. Another example is expert, proficient, apprentice, novice. There is another example outstanding, admirable, average, inadequate. Exemplary, proficient, adequate, inadequate. So this is the stage 4 where the labels are fixed. Now moving further to the stage 5. Development of description for each criterion under various scale levels. After stage 4, we move to stage 5 where we need to develop descriptions of performance quality for each level of each criterion. Here, we can begin with the top category, that is the highest level of performance which can we have already created and grouped under each criterion. For example, the highest scale level is exemplary and we have already written these description for each criterion which now will be placed in the respective boxes of the grade. The next step, we can write the description for the lowest performance for each category. In this task, the question number 8, which was discussed in the previous stage, or you can say that the first stage can guide us. That is, what is the worst fulfillment of the assignment you can imagine? While keeping the answer of the question number 8 under consideration, students, the description for the lowest level are framed. Framing description for the lowest level is often almost negation of the exemplary task description. So, this is the 5 steps we have to follow while constructing or designing a rubrics. Thank you very much for listening.